It's time for Tycoons of Small Biz, spotlighting the true backbone of the American economy, the true tycoons of business in America, the owners, founders, and CEOs of small businesses. The show's hosts, Austin Peterson and Landon Mance, are registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors Corporation, a broker-dealer member SIPC, and registered investment advisor. The views expressed by your hosts, Austin and Landon, are not necessarily the views of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Let's lean in as Austin and Landon connect with this week's Tycoons.
Good afternoon, Tycoons, and welcome to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. Landon Mance and I, Austin Peterson, the co-hosts of this program, are excited to have Ed Taney in today from Taney Engineering, all the way from Las Vegas, Nevada. He's just down the street from Landon. Ed, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to having a very good discussion.
Yeah, we're excited about the discussion. Landon's been talking to me a little bit about your guys' meeting and how you first met on the golf course. And, you know, I figure you can't be that good of a golfer if you were golfing with Landon.
We both have challenges. We'll just let it go at that.
Well, we're excited to have you on the show today, and we typically start, Ed, by having our guests tell a little bit about themselves personally, maybe a little bit of history of what brought you to where you are today and building the company. And so if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about you and your family, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'm 57 years old. I'm a graduate of Carson High School up in Northern Nevada in 1981. And really have been in the state of Nevada a majority of my life. I did have a little bit of a stint up in the Midwest, up in North Dakota. That was about like 7 years ago or so. I'm an actual graduate from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And I came into the engineering field in the mid 80s. And I would consider myself to be extremely fortunate in a couple of regards, in that coming out of high school, I was very, very good in mathematics and somewhat challenged, I would say, and maybe some of the finer arts and in the English. And so I kind of blindly chose engineering, kind of blindly chose civil engineering. And I ended up in the middle of a hotbed in Las Vegas, Nevada in 1985. And that allowed me to really progress rapidly, much like you guys have down in the Phoenix area, just phenomenal growth. I mean, unbridled. I don't even know what the correct term would be. But it enabled me to come into the consulting realm, which is what Taney Engineering is all about, where we really cater to private development. And so we cater to home builders, and we cater to industrial builders, commercial, and we also do some public works oriented type of work. But coming into Las Vegas in the mid 80s, other than a couple of blips and a couple of slowdowns, it's just been phenomenal growth. It allowed me to really hone my skills as a young engineer and ultimately work my way up into ownership. And so I formulated Taney Engineering in the year 2000 with a wonderful partner, and we have since brought another partner in. So there's actually three of us that run this operation, and we have just been, I would call it, blessed. And we've gone through some rough times, but have gone through some very, very good times, and things are going very, very well. And I love what I do. And so all of that is just quite a bit of fortune. Also have integrated an extremely lovely wife. I'm blessed in that regard too, and that we just have a fabulous relationship. We have 3 kids, all currently in the college age. I've got one that's going to go for her master's now, and then 2 more that are still in their undergrad stage. And we are hunkered down here in Las Vegas, and we got kids going to school all over the place, but just a wonderful existence. So.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear about, and it also explains why you don't have any hair on the top of your head. The fact that you've got 3 kids in college at the same time.
Yes.
Oh, it's the consulting. Okay, it had to be one or the other. I took a shot in the dark.
They add to the follicle challenges as well. So.
Well, that's great. No, it seems like obviously you've built a great firm over the last 20 years. It sounds like, and you know, engineering for me, it's something close to me just based on the fact that I've got a father-in-law that's an aerospace engineer, even though aerospace engineering didn't exist as a program in college when he went. He's 91 years old, so he's been retired for quite some time, but studied electrical engineering, and then aerospace kind of took off in the late 60s, 70s, and into the 80s and 90s. And So he had a great career in that. And then I've got a very close personal friend of mine that's a civil engineer up in, where is it? I guess it's Lehi, Utah.
Okay.
So he loves it. He's actually helped me personally with some real estate development projects that I've worked on over the years, and it's a unique field. It's something that I would never be able to get into. I did great in math until geometry and calculus got introduced, and I was in trouble.
You tapped out at that point.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe
that's
maybe
just really
Landon's
quickly though.
better. Yeah.
That's exactly the type of clientele that we work with primarily. Real estate development. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, I grew up in a construction family. My dad was a contractor. I actually have owned a company in the past, outside of my financial planning business, that did residential and commercial painting. And then I've just kind of always been involved in construction and development over the years. And I've, like a lot of people, took a bath when the real estate market collapsed in
mhm.
2007, 2008. But it's a business that I understand just with the way that I grew up. But I also understand where the big risks are now, and I made some mistakes and moved some dirt, and now I just make decisions that are prior to moving dirt, and I sell it and let other people take that risk on.
You know what, sir? I've already sensed a great deal of wisdom here. I mean that wholeheartedly too. That
Yeah.
is so profoundly true what you just had to say. And then flipping it back over to my court is that what does lead to loss of hair in this profession is it's wonderful to be an engineer. It's wonderful to go out and do a grading plan on a piece of property and to lay out the utilities and do the stuff that we like to do. But where the complications come, it's just the business world, and it's the way that money works. And a lot of builders and developers will, unfortunately, they don't have the ability to go cash out land. So
Yeah.
you're getting into a piece of land, whether it be 10 acres, 40 acres, or larger, and there's a huge interest carry associated with that. And when they come to a civil engineering firm, it's one thing to do the engineering correctly, which we feel like we can do amply and most of the time, if not all the time. But it's trying to deal with governing entities on getting the permits. And that's where the stress and strain comes in. And I'm sure that you've probably delved into that realm. So,
Yeah.
on the engineering side, we have a whole fleet of different personnel that assist with that. But ultimately, the developers will want to know where their permits are. When can I grade, and when can I go vertical, and when can I start my utilities? And they hold us responsible for it. So
Yeah.
your wisdom in not turning dirt is profound, and I hear you. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, there's still issues ahead of that, right? Like you said, I mean, working with the city's not easy. I've had a project that, even with a master plan completely approved, you find out that the city was not ready for something, or they didn't have enough sewer capacity for the land that you're trying to develop. And, they're not sure if they want to rezone it, or, you look at the zoning and they'll say, 4 units per acre. And then, oh, well, actually, maybe we're better with 3 based on the way that things look. And, just the back and forth and getting plat approval and getting the traffic study and the engineering done. It's a lot of work, but
yeah.
it is something that I enjoy, and it's actually not a bad way to make some money on the side for me.
Oh, amen to that too.
Yeah.
And I think through all of that, I think we all have from my perspective, kind of a divine appointment to do what we do. And a lot of folks that are just not as fortunate as I am, and that I was meant to do this. And I don't know, my wife, she basically accuses me of a little bit of sadism and masochism because I enjoy this. And she's just shaking her head on occasion. But I'll tell you what, though, is that when you get into any realm in life, though, is that you do get older and you get wiser and you get more knowledge. And I tell you what, I have learned just an incredible amount, and I continue to learn. And I've really progressed with a lot of things that make me a much better consultant and a much better owner, a much better employer. And it just continues to grow inside of me. And it's something we always got to look at that, from that perspective, is that although there's going to be stresses and strains, whether it's Landon and, some young kids right now, and the Lord knows there's a lot of strain with that. And then when you're in the business realm, having clients being a little bit anxious about getting their permits. There's always a proper way to handle that. And I tell you what, we can all get a lot better, and I continue to grow at it. So I'm enjoying life more than ever now, even in the middle of this COVID crisis, because of that. It's the challenges that have been thrown at my feet, and then just trying to deal with them. So,
Yeah. No,
Yeah, hey,
that's,
Austin,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I just want to jump in because I want to stay on that train there if we can, Ed. You mentioned challenges and working through, through them and coming out, stronger on the other side. So talk to us a little bit about that. What are some of the things that you have been faced with recently, and what have you done to adapt to those and you make your company and your management team and yourself stronger as a leader?
yeah, absolutely, and great point. So recently, this is kind of crazy on how almost sovereign that the civil engineering industry has been through this. And that right off the bat, a lot of companies have closed down very abruptly. I know a lot of friends, personal friends of mine, that have lost daycares, for instance, and restaurants. And it's awful. It really is. It's been beyond a challenge. I don't even know what I would do if I were in that predicament. But in the civil engineering side, right off the bat, they considered construction to be vital. And thank God, for that. We definitely have had challenges with that, and I'll get to that in a second. But for the most part, we've put on 10 people here. We've actually grown, and I'm not going to say that our profits are going through the roof, but they've maintained fairly stable at it. The real challenges with what has happened with the COVID crisis really comes to to me, it's the fright that's going on, and Lord knows that this is a real virus. And I don't want to downplay that one iota. I personally went through it. I had it about a month and a half ago, and had a couple of days where I was sweating quite a bit, and it was challenging, but nonetheless I came out okay on the back end of that. But what's really prominent in all fields is people are extremely frightened of being in an atmosphere, and like in this enclosed 10,000 square foot building that we have. We have the right policies in place. We wear masks whenever we have public come in. We certainly do, and we social distance. We're very careful about that. But a lot of employees are just scared to the point where they want to work remotely. And you have to honor that. You really do. Because me personally, I'm not that full of fear, and for a completely different reason. I just don't have that fear when it comes to that type of anxiety with the virus. But other people certainly do, and it's very real in them. So now when you end up having to allow that to happen, you could have half of your staff out working remotely. And the challenges that accompany that then is you can almost watch it is that, really the profits kind of taper down because people are not here. And in the consulting realm, it's vitally important to me anyway, to communicate, to walk down in a couple of offices and have a dialogue with people. And from a team structure on what we do in producing plans, that same sort of thing is just vitally important. So that's been a challenge, but yet we've absolutely overcome it. And in regard to using more of the Teams type of software and the go-to meetings, and I think we've actually found a very, very happy median where we can support people, and yet we keep the productivity at a very, very reasonable level. I don't know what the future is going to hold, though. We'll just kind of keep our fingers crossed as we move forward. Now, it's just unbelievable to me is that we've got a staff size now of 60, which is maxed out on a 10,000 square foot building. And we're to a point now where we got so many opportunities we're actually having to contemplate turning down some work. So just fortunate, and I attribute a lot to that, and mostly just we're just fortunate. So things have been very, very good.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the Southern Nevada marketplace as it pertains to what you guys do. You kind of have alluded to the fact in prior conversation, or I should say in your intake form, that there's really been this big shift. And I'm curious. Well, let me mention what you said. So the shift is really from this large, scale industrial. I'm sorry, more from retail to more large scale industrial projects. And I'm curious as to how that has been magnified with COVID, because not only, in the last, I don't know, 5, 10, 20 years, we've seen this declining retail environment to more, digital. But I would be really curious in your expertise and your opinion, how has that been magnified with COVID, especially now that, we're doing,
Well, yeah.
60, 70, 90, some of us 100% of our shopping is all done online now. And how does that translate over to what you're seeing?
Yeah, very insightful, and that's spot on with what we've noticed. And again, no matter what walk of life you're in, you got to have your ears kind of open, and you got to be receptive to what's going on and what's changing. And this stuff has kind of fallen in our lap too, but exactly what you're alluding to has happened, just unfolded right before my eyes in the last couple of years. And so you've got this whole sequence where we're shifting away from kind of retail type of sales, and you're getting a lot of these really big companies. Bed Bath and Beyond comes to mind, and clothing manufacturers. That what they're finding to be more viable and more profitable is that, due to the internet sales, is that they get these, I call them big block warehouses, and they're prominent in Phoenix, and they're really prominent here in Vegas, where we're dealing with a consortium of industrial builders that are putting massive buildings up. I'm talking 1 million square feet underneath one roof. It's just insane to look at. I mean, you're talking about a monolithic slab that covers 21 acres, just enormous. And it's got 48-foot clear on the inside of it, but it's all being driven by their ability to sell product online, ship it into a warehouse, and then redistribute it right out of the warehouse through Amazon and other means. But what you're finding, and what we're seeing, is a huge decline in the typical kind of strip center, if you will, commercial type of build out, and just a complete paradigm shift over to these big block industrial buildings. And then, like you alluded to, is that you interject in February and March, this COVID crisis, where everybody is being, staying at home, and it's feeding more of that online type of shopping. And it's just really increased it. It's just unbelievable. It's gone exponential here in the Valley. And again, it's just, for whatever reason, we've been right in the middle of that. And we ended up with probably 40 to 50% of our work now is just on the big block industrial. It's fabulous. It really is. A couple of other notes on that too. And boy, I'm really dating myself here. This might have changed, but I remember in 7th grade, Nevada history class, Nevada is the pre-warehousing state. And so these folks can actually store their product, and I believe it's still like that. Whereas in California, even I believe Utah and all the surrounding states, you're going to get taxed on that. So Nevada then is got a leg up on people. And you combine that with some of the taxation that's happening in the Southern Cal area, and you just got a bunch of businesses not only establishing a presence in Vegas, but coming out of other states to establish a presence in Nevada. And a couple of other items concerning that industrial is that you need to be on a primary corridor. And so Interstate 15 and Interstate 95 both run through Nevada. Unfortunately, they really don't go east-west, but they go north-south, and they tie into the 70 and the 80s, so they can distribute their product relatively easily. And that's another item of note, is that the Reno area has got, it's exploding with that big block as well. And they've got Interstate 80, which is a true east-west corridor coming right out of Northern California. And that just allows them to go due east with products. So amazing. I just feel I'm excited to be a part of it. I love being a part of it. And it's been fantastic. So.
Yeah, a couple quick points I want to make. You hit the nail on the head with the industrial space. I mean, we've seen it quite a bit. And it's funny, I go to church with a guy who's a commercial real estate broker. And I just kind of mentioned in passing, I said, I don't know what things have been like for you. I think about people in commercial real estate and everything that's going on with COVID. And I kind of wonder. And he said, best year that I've had of my entire career, because we focus on industrial. So for that reason, because he's not, he says, look, the Class A office space, the real high-end office space, downtown Phoenix, it's getting crushed, right? But the industrial space is doing super, super well. I personally have 3 or 4 deliveries at my house a day, right, that come from this. And so, there's the industrial warehouse, which you're spot on about, but then it's really the whole supply chain, right? I
Yeah.
think back to Warren Buffett. People thought he was crazy a decade ago buying into railroads.
Hmm.
Why do you need railroads? Well, now all of a sudden we've got all of this product moving throughout the country, a lot of it on railroads. Then it goes to the warehouse. Then it gets on a semi truck going a certain area, and then it's in another warehouse and being delivered with what they call last mile delivery, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got these small, the Amazon trucks that you see everywhere. Those are the last mile delivery. It's being delivered within a very small area,
Hmm.
and so it's going from warehouse to warehouse to warehouse to train to, to truck. I mean, this whole supply chain that's been set up and put together over the last decade is tremendous. And
Yes,
it really did almost prepare us for this COVID-19 crisis and has
it did.
allowed business to continue.
Yeah, and you just hit on something that we got involved with our first Amazon distribution center here in Vegas. As a matter of fact, it just opened. It's out in North Las Vegas, off of Craig Road in Alexander. But that whole sequence just blew my mind. My goodness, how they evidently own their own aircraft now, and they fly it into McCarran, and then they offload that into 18 wheelers, which they own, which go to the warehouse between 2 in the morning and 6 in the morning. Then you got these all these vans that are lined up, and you got different sequences of vans that load up quickly in a half hour span and then hit the streets, and then they start coming back in after about 10 hours. But and then they distribute the product inside of the warehouse with conveyor belts, and it's something else. Amazing. You are right. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I've got a member of my Vistage group that owns one of these last mile delivery companies, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but he went somewhere from getting approval with Amazon to be one of their last mile companies, and starting with somewhere around 15 trucks, and in 18 months he's now above 70 trucks just with Amazon.
Wow.
And it's exploded his business growth, and he's one of those that's been blessed through this COVID situation. And I make jokes all the time. I wish I were in the plexiglass business, right? Because I would have made a killing over the last 12 months. you know but yeah, no, it's one of those things, and it's really one of the main reasons that we have this program, is to highlight the fact that small businesses are so good. Now, Amazon's a large organization, but Amazon has built itself on the back of other small businesses, right?
Hmm.
And so we've got these true tycoons of small business who have figured out a way to make money no matter what happens in the economy, pandemic, whatever it is. You figure out a way to just get things done. And the word pivot gets used way too much, but you just figure out a way to pivot or do something a little bit differently because of the hand that you were dealt.
Yeah, very well stated there too. One side note that I heard about Amazon, and this is just another mind-blowing fact, if it in fact is true, which I would assume it was. I heard it from somebody from Amazon, but in their New York City, like the Manhattan region now, they now guarantee deliveries within like about 3 hours or something like that. It's like less than a day. Can you imagine that? I
Yeah.
could order a dozen Pro V1 golf balls, and 2 hours later, it's going to show up on my desk. It's like, wow.
Yeah. They have some same day delivery stuff in Phoenix as well. It's incredible.
It really is amazing.
Yeah.
Now when you go online to order something, if they give you a delivery date of more than a few days or a week or two out, you're looking and going, I don't think so. I thought I'll just go to Amazon and find a comparable product and have it within 48 hours. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a little side note about that is that I've got a basset hound in the house, and boy, when that doorbell rings, which seems to happen like 3 or 4 times a day now, boy, does he let the whole neighborhood know about the delivery man at the door.
So, yeah, Ed, I had a basset hound growing up. After
Uh-huh.
my parents got divorced, I was 12. I don't even remember how it happened, but my dad stumbled upon this basset hound, and you have never heard a dog howl until you have heard of a
Yes.
basset hound.
Yes. And that when I first bought the house, before my wife, we were actually up in North Dakota, and a little bit of a long story, but I came back down in 2017, and then it was about a year before she came down. And I just classic, bachelor stuff. I had a television, I had a bed, I was good. But then I brought the Basset Hound in, and you talk about echoing off of those big vaulted ceilings. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
So there's some truth to hanging pictures and getting carpets down. It actually buffers that sound a bit.
Oh, man. I'll tell you. Well, I think this is a good time to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, and then we'll come back. I want to talk to you about one of the things that I was surprised that you didn't mention in difficulties during COVID was government offices not being open or not being fully staffed, and how you've been able to kind of work through that. So let's take a quick
I'll
break,
touch
and
on
we'll
that.
we'll talk about that.
Whether you're an established local company or a brand new startup, you can count on GBS to be part of your family. We're not just any benefits consulting firm, we're GBS. We have nearly 30 years of experience in group benefits, a strong sense of purpose, and it shows. GBS, believe in something better. gbsbenefits.com.
All right, Tycoons, welcome back to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. We're here with Ed Taney of Taney Engineering, and we've had a great conversation so far. We've talked about COVID, obviously. We've talked about the things that we have to do as small business owners to do things differently during this time period, but also talked about what the last 20 years has looked like in Southern Nevada from an engineering standpoint, and kind of what brings us to where we are today with Ed. And so, Ed, and talking about the COVID-19 crisis and the fact that you guys have actually grown through this and continued to have projects to work on, one of the things that came to mind for me was just the fact that, government offices have not fully been open, right? And so you've got to have contact with them to get approvals and permits and all those sorts of things. So what have you guys done as an organization to be able to work through that, and maybe a little bit about the relationship that you have with the government offices and how you guys handle things a little differently than maybe some other engineering consulting firms do?
Yeah, it's a very, very valid question, and very valid point. And that there's several aspects to that, but one of them, which again, I did not expect this at all. It's quite contrary to what I had in my mind's eye when I first got this notification. Clark County and the city of North Las Vegas, the city of Henderson, and the city of Las Vegas are the four primary entities that we deal with here. And simultaneously, all four of them begin to shut down. Now, they shut down to a certain extent for probably 2 weeks to a month or so, where they went to half days. But eventually, probably starting in April, they ended up coming back to where they were just working remotely. Now, what I thought in my mind is that this was really going to stagnate our ability to process plans. I thought it was going to be much worse than it had been. And another point to that effect is that I think any entity that grows rapidly, much like you guys have had down in Phoenix and here in Vegas, is that ultimately you just end up with more, I'm going to just call it what it is. It's bureaucratic red tape. There's just more departments to have to go through. And the longevity or the processing time just keeps on being expanded on getting grading permits and your horizontal and vertical construction permits. But what I had envisioned in my mind was quite opposite. When the city of North Las Vegas, for instance, went remote, what that enabled me to do all of a sudden is get meetings with all the stakeholders. If I had problems with the planning or with the traffic issue, I could get the gentleman from North Las Vegas almost onto a go-to meeting call immediately and discuss the matter. And it turned out completely upside down, and we started actually being able to process plans a little bit quicker. Now, what drug that down, though, kind of in the reverse manner, is the fact that we have to submit. In a lot of these entities, we haven't gone completely paperless, but we have to actually have bond copies that go out, and then Mylars ultimately, and those were quarantined sometimes for up to a week. So that on the back end of it kind of slowed it down. But I think all in all, from my perspective, and this is just in the private sector of land development, it's actually been refreshingly easier, which is contradictory to what most people would think. So
Yeah. Well, I would have to say hats off to Clark County and the city of Las Vegas and Henderson that they, figured out a way. And And maybe this ultimately ends up changing the way they do things going forward and realize that it doesn't have to be done the way that we've always done it and that it can
Yeah.
actually be more efficient this way.
It could very well, but also that leads me back to the fact that there's a huge difference in in a governing entity, and they're responsible for the well-being of the general public, obviously, and so they've got a set of guidelines. And your typical person that would be reviewing a plan set, they're going to just go down a checklist, and that environment that I just painted is perfect for that. If they're at their home, they actually have the ability to sit down without the phone ringing, without people coming in to disturb them. It's conducive to them getting that task done quicker, and that's really what's unfolded.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, though, when you're a consulting firm, it's just vitally important that we talk amongst each other, and that's a face-to-face deal, and that has been a very, very much a hardship. So, from my perspective, I am just grateful when we have staff that actually will come in. And when we go into a conference room and meet on a project, we do the social distancing, wear masks, and but we can still communicate, and we can still look eye to eye, and we can try to ferret out a lot of the complications that can happen in my realm of the world. So pros and cons to everything, but one heck of a challenge. And I'll tell you that it's been one heck of a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, hats off to you and your staff, as well as, like I said, those governmental entities to figure out a way to still get business done. Because I think that the impression is, and then I'm going to let Landon talk to you about how you've grown over the last 20 years, because I think it's been impressive. But I think that there's this impression throughout the country that Las Vegas is just where you go to go gambling, right? And people are always surprised when Landon says, I live 20 minutes from the strip. Like I'm very rarely in that area of town. And, Las Vegas really over the last 20 to 30 years has really become just like any other city. Yes, the gambling's there, the strip's there, people come into town for the conventions, and you guys are very reliant on that revenue, right, for the tax base and that sort of thing. But you can find any kind of industry in Las Vegas, and I think that it's done a tremendous job of becoming more of a destination for business beyond just that's where we're going to have a convention because we want our people to come in and have fun for a few days and learn about something.
Well, thank you, Austin. That is a great topic that you just brought up. Great topic. And that, Las Vegas has a perception, and this perception is never going to change with the majority of America or the world for that matter. For instance, whenever you're flying into Vegas on an airplane, people are just ready to go. And that is the perception. And that's what Vegas is all about. That's why we don't pay state income tax.
Yeah.
Is that you've got this gaming element that happens down on the strip and on the primary corridor. And people are there to have fun. And what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? But on the flip side of that, and I've had this discussion with a multitude of, not only friends of mine from different parts of America, but also with family members, is that Las Vegas is wonderful. It is a wonderful place to raise a family. It's a wonderful place to be very active in church, which I am. And we reach out, heavily through Taney Engineering with that aspect too. And there are wonderful people around here. And it's also a wonderful place to be involved with Little League athletics or anything else, any other type of typical venture that you're going to have in America. And you integrate that in Vegas, where you also have the ability to run down and get a gallon of milk at 2:30 in the morning. It's a pretty good place, So I love it. I really do. And I think it's unfortunate that there is that perception, but that perception is not necessarily reality. When, like Landon and I can attest to, it's like I go down to the strip twice a year when my in-laws make me take them to the strip.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty normal for residents of Las Vegas,
Yes,
or Henderson,
it is,
or
right.
yeah.
But a very vibrant place, and unlike there's a couple of inherent problems with Phoenix and Vegas. When you stick millions of people in the middle of a desert, water becomes king, doesn't it? So.
That's right. That's right. Those frozen margaritas only go so far, right, on the Las Vegas Strip. Other than that, you really need water.
You do, and it's from my engineering perspective, I have no problem with this because it's what makes us have the ability to not pay state income tax. But they rightfully put moratoriums on landscaping, back in the in the 50s and the 60s and through the 70s, people would be planting grass in the front yards, and that happened down in Phoenix as well. And then they finally figured out that the water's running out, so they eventually put moratoriums on that. And then eventually they go to a perspective where new homes will only have a very small amount of grass, if any, available in the rear yard. But yet our nice casinos that come in, they can spray that stuff all over the place and have fountains, and it's that's perfectly acceptable, and I get it. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I actually live in a neighborhood. Actually, I was thinking Landon had been to my house, but he hasn't. I live in a neighborhood that happens to have groundwater, and so we have an exemption for that. And so
Oh,
my neighborhood has trees and grass everywhere, which means that
okay.
it's never hard to sell a house in that neighborhood because people want this, oasis in the desert type of a deal. And it was one of the things that drew us to that neighborhood as well. But you're right.
Okay.
Everywhere else, it's that desert landscaping, which,
Moratorium. Yeah.
if we
So I
hadn't
got kind
found,
of a funny side story with that. The house that I owned here out in the northwest part of the valley for probably about like 12 years or so, we were on you call it a quasi-municipal well, where, before the growth really caught a lot of those outlying areas, people would take a 2.5 acre parcel and subdivide it into 4 lots, put a private cul-de-sac on it, and then put 4 homes up. And you could get a well. And so that's what we had on this property, was a well that serviced all 4 lots. Now, ultimately what happened is that, the Las Vegas Valley Water District figured out that they could, enact a moratorium on wells. And if you ever ran dry, or if they ever got a municipal line within, I think, 500 feet of your property, then they put a moratorium in place that made you cap the well and then tap into their water line. Now it's a pretty big cost, So for those 4 lots, when this was going on, probably about 12 years ago or so, I think we were looking at well over $100,000 to do that. There was a water main that got brought in. We were going to have to bring it down like 800 feet, and then we had to have the water meters. And what they do is that they assess impact fees on the water meters, which pays for future infrastructure. So anyway, you add it all up, and all 4 of us were looking at like $30,000 bills or something like that to do this. And my wife was just kind of joking around with me, and she goes, "Well, it's how does that work? How come the well owners don't have enough power to overcome this?" And I said, "No, hun, in school they taught us that water flows downhill. Well, in all actuality, it flows towards money, and the water district has the money. So that's the way that worked out, but all for the right reasons in the long run."
yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
Landon, ask
Ed, I
him
want to.
about growth. Let's,
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get in that, Ed, I want to just circle back to a comment that you made, and I want to just hear your thoughts. You've talked a little bit about the personal connection with your staff, with your clients, with these government entities that you deal with, and obviously the environment. We've seen a huge shift to digital, to this heavy reliance on social media when it comes to communicating. And you kind of alluded to maybe that doesn't translate so well over to growing a healthy consulting firm. So talk to us a little bit about why that is, and what you've done to keep morale high when you maybe can't have a lot of, physical, interactions with other people that you deal with.
Yeah, another great subject, Landon. Really, really good subject. And that this is a wonderful topic for me personally, because of the different challenges that we have gone through. And it's really me and my partners here. We've had quite a few different things that have transpired since we opened up shop. I ended up getting into a really horrendous lawsuit with some ex-business partners. I was part of a different company back in the 1990s, and I ended up parting ways. And a long story, not even worth repeating, but we ended up throwing rocks at each other, made some attorneys pretty wealthy through the whole thing. But that happened when we first started the Taney engineering. And then we went through that horrendous crash in 2008, which Austin already mentioned. That was very, very challenging as well. We've also had just kind of odds and ends that have happened with employees around the office. One thing that is really where I have grown, and I've just grown tremendously, is that a lot of issues that crop up in life you really kind of cause on your own. And with me, on kind of on a personal note, it's just the volatility of this business. And I've alluded to the fact that, we work with clientele that have huge interest carrying notes that are going on, and it can get very, very volatile. And because of the way that I've just been, the cloth that I was cut from, or whatever you'd want to say, is that I had a tendency to get pretty darn angry on occasions. I would get angry with clients. I would get angry with staff. And how counterproductive is that when you really are able to sit back and monitor what you're doing, how you're being a cause in the action of what may be transpiring around you. And one thing that I've really grown out recently is starting with the staff level, is making sure that the project engineers that we're bringing along, and I'm talking about the project engineers and even the up and coming engineers that are just in their first couple of years, is just this ability to really communicate well, and to communicate well, but also stop when you're starting to get a little bit on the angry side, which can happen in this business, and it just flows from the top to the bottom. If I get yelled at by a client, then my tendency is going to be going out and kind of taking it out on the guy that may have made a perceived mistake or whatever. But we've been able to solidify a staff, and it's primarily through that. And even when I make a mistake, and Lord knows I do, and I will make more of them on a move forward basis. But I actually have apology Fridays where I really kind of look back every month or so, and I say, oh my goodness, I probably shouldn't have acted like that with this employee. And I won't get into specifics, but I'll just take a little bit of time to bring them in and authentically from the bottom of my heart acknowledge them for everything that they're doing that's correct. And I found that there's a whole paradigm shift that goes on in an office environment or in your household, whatever, is that when you actually act from that, it's amazing what can happen. First of all, you're really acknowledging folks, but you're also just being human, and you're acknowledging the fact that you've made a mistake, and it really just kind of repairs a lot, and it just really allows just a shift to happen. And I think through that, I've actually had some employees that have done the same. It's actually kind of stepped down a little bit when I've seen them reach out and kind of repair some stuff, and it really has led to a cohesive nature around this office, which is unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. And as far as getting angry, I've done a couple of things here recently I wanted to mention, which are just incredible. And I don't know that the outcome would always be like this, but there was a client that was a big industrial builder, and we both are a little bit on the prideful side, I would say. And he would get angry also. And finally, one day, this really blew up. It blew up to a point where, unfortunately, they took their work. They took their work out of Taney Engineering, and they took it elsewhere. And, where you're kind of left with that is that I'm, just saying, boy, he shouldn't have done that. And I'm sure he was doing the same thing about me. But regardless of all that, it took me about 6 months on that one. But right before last Christmas, I called the guy. And again, from the bottom of my heart, I just authentically told him I was wrong in what I did. I didn't bring anything that was perceived on his end. I just said, this is what I did, and I was wrong. I should have never done that. And I just wanted to say, I really apologize to you. And it just kind of took him back a little bit, but he said, well, thank you very much for doing that. Now, what happened last week is that the guy called me back and he gave us more work. So it's not always going to be the end of that story, but regardless of whether or not he would have come back or not, just that simple act of letting that go is powerful. So this is my wisdom that's coming at the age of 57. And by the way, I've got so many more of those to clean up. Bring me back in a year and I'll tell you some more, because I think we all collect a list of those as we walk through life. But it's and that's the part that just really gets me up in the morning too, and it makes me feel good about the staff that we have and really the environment that we have, and it's incredible. So.
Yeah. Well, I expect a phone call sometime in the very near future apologizing for your downplaying your golfing abilities as we always go out and golf, because you tend to mop the floor with me every time we play. So
I'll give you an update on that. I might be playing with some prominent people here Thursday, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, Ed, as we start to kind of push up against time here, we want to hear, what's on the horizon, for you and for this great company and this great culture that you built over at your firm. Talk to us about, what's coming up in the next, couple years. Where do you see your company going? And then also, a lot of the work that Austin and I do is around succession and exit and transition planning. And maybe talk to us about the big picture for, you. What ultimately, what do you see happening with your firm when you're getting to a point where you're, not going to be working anymore?
Great question. Great question. So from a personal point of view, I kind of shared that I'm an empty nester. We've got kids that are going to be graduating very, very soon, hopefully, and then moving on with their lives. And so my wife and I are, we occupy our time in different manners. She's very active in church. I am as well. We do a lot of outreach type of programs, but I really love what I do. And I think I'm realizing that I love what I do, not necessarily because it's the engineering, which I thrive on, which I truly do, but it's more about the type of environment that we're providing. It's really more about the outreach programs that we have here in the Vegas area. So on a personal level, I don't see myself getting out of this game for quite some time. Whether it be 10 or 20 years, I don't know. I'm 57 now, but I can really honestly see myself continuing on till the age of 80. If Lord willing, I got a healthy body and a clear mind at that point of time. As far as my partners go, though, I don't know what the future is going to hold with them. We just kind of play that by ear. We talk a lot, and we'll just, everybody's got their own path in life, and you got to be very respectful of that. And I don't know exactly what they will be doing on a move forward basis. But I'm extremely excited, not about necessarily the continued growth of Vegas, which, by the way, I see an end coming to that, because there is just a certain amount of privately held land left in the valley. I mean, we're about done. We might be able to continue out the corridors going down I-15 and the 95 and maybe jumping over into El Dorado Valley and the Boulder City, but there might be a time frame on that perhaps. But I'm just excited about staying pace with these technological advances with Taney Engineering, continuing to grow these employees as people more than anything, and having an input into this wonderful area that is known as Las Vegas, and trying to get that perceived perception to switch a little bit maybe with the people out there. But that's what I got going, and I'm just excited to be alive. I really do. I love life right now. I love the environment that we have. I love the whole atmosphere of what we got going. And I'm looking forward to playing golf with Landon Mance again. So,
well, we got to make this happen when I'm in town as well. So,
well, come on out. Yeah. My rule, Austin, is at least give me 20 minutes to get to the tee box. Okay, that's my only rule.
Okay, as long as I give you 20 minutes advance notice, huh?
That's it.
Well, I tell you what, that one of the things that sticks out for me, and we all have weaknesses. We all do things wrong as business leaders, and we have to course correct from time to time, right? What I hear today from you, Ed, is a lot of times in the media, business owners get this bad rap as we're just greedy people who are trying to make money on the backs of other people, right? Yeah. And that, I think that's an unfortunate narrative that's out there, and you have shown us that that's not you, right? I mean, we're all running businesses. We're all trying to be profitable as a business, but you obviously recognize that the most important asset that you have as a business owner walks out the door every day at 5 or 6 or whenever it is that they walk out the door, right? And it's those people, and you care about them individually. You care about their progression as professionals, but you care more even about them as individuals and what they do out in the community. And you're modeling that for them with the commitments that you guys have at Taney Engineering and the outreach that you guys do. And so, I would say hats off to you. I mean, it's obviously great to be recognized for the growth of the business, which you've done a tremendous job of over the last 20 years, but giving people an opportunity to have employment and to grow professionally and personally is a big, big deal. And congratulations to you for that.
And how about this concept? I'm just going to throw this out there. Not that it would be me, but wouldn't it be refreshing to have somebody in public office that goes and quits attacking other people and just goes off of kind of enjoying other people's presence and shifting that paradigm. Now I'm really dreaming, but I had to throw that.
Are you trying to hint at a future endeavor?
No, I don't think so. I think I'll still be continuing to be on the golf course with you, Landon, and be here in my office. I really have no aspirations to jump into that, but it would be refreshing. So
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was in the car yesterday thinking to myself, I got to start buying up websites in case I end up going towards political office at some point, because I just get tired of the spin, to be honest with you.
Goodness, yeah.
Right. And so I'm thinking to myself, I got to buy this website, No Spin Austin, or, something like that, because it's just, I get so tired of the sound bites. I would much rather have somebody stand up there and say, this is what's going on. The left wants to tell you this, the right wants to tell you this. Here's the reality.
Yeah.
And let's work together and find solutions together for the problems that we face as as a country, right?
Yeah.
We live in the best country in the world. I have a hard time with anybody disputing that. We have more opportunity than any country in the world, and we don't need to turn into this argument back and forth all the time about the best way to get where we're going. Everybody ultimately, I hope, is trying to go the same direction. It's just we disagree on how to get there, but we can do that civilly.
Yeah. And my response to that is amen to that, brother.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Well, I have really appreciated the conversation. We want to make sure you have an opportunity to throw the website out there, phone number, whatever it is, best way to get a hold of you. We obviously have some real estate developers who listen to the program, and we want you to be able to use this any way that you can to help grow your business as well. So,
yeah, well, thank you very much. And we'd love to hear from you. It's www.taneycorp.com is our website, and our primary phone number here in Las Vegas is area code 702-362-8844. And I just love the ability to just really make relationships more than anything. We're certainly here to be a presence to any sort of land developers or builders. And thank you very much.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, proudly hosted by Austin Peterson and Landon Mance. Austin and Landon are comprehensive financial planning professionals specializing in financial, estate, and succession planning for small business owners. Austin and Landon have offices in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and represent clients in 14 states throughout the country. Join Austin, Landon, and the featured Tycoons live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. right here on Business RadioX and your favorite podcast.